As you know, I'm a fan of a bit of a theme. So today's sermon is entitled Radiance in the Shadows. And I'd like to begin and end today with poems from Michael Longley as a tribute to his extraordinary gift for capturing the essence of light and of love. And as I say, we hold his family in prayer as we honour his legacy and grateful for the radiance and light that his words have brought into our lives. One of his shortest poems is in fact called The Candlelight Master. And he says, "I am the candlelight master, striking a match in the shadows, a smoky wick, then radiance. I am the candlelight master." The beautiful words of the late Michael Longley, and very appropriate, I'm sure you will agree, for a Candlemas service. And I sat down last night and watched a very interesting documentary on the life of Michael Longley that had been on through the week. I spotted it on BBC iPlayer. And the documentary was entitled, "Where Do Poems Come From?" And he answered the question in the most beautiful way, saying, "When I write a poem, I am moving into the unknown, hoping to be surprised by some redemptive eloquence, to cast light into dark corners." And on this Candlemas Sunday, as the light of our gathering fills this space, we are reminded of the hope and the calling that comes with being bearers of light. As we know, Candlemas marks the moment when we are told Jesus Christ was presented at the temple, a recognition that he was, and is for many, a light for the world. The prophet Simeon called him a light for revelation, a light that transcends barriers and radiates hope into the shadows of despair. Light, as we see it in many spirits of the divine, is neither passive nor decorative. It is transformative. It reveals truth, comforts the weary, and guides the lost. But carrying light often requires courage. It's not easy to walk in the shadows of fear and division, and to extend mercy in a world so often hardened by callousness, selfishness, and cruelty. This is the challenge that each and every one of us face as individuals and also as a community. In recent days or weeks, an extraordinary example of light in the darkness have been the words of Bishop Marion Edgar Buddy, who spoke at the national service of prayer in the United States following the inauguration of their new president. And she offered an extraordinary example of carrying light at this service. Standing amid a deeply divided country, she spoke with clarity and compassion, not in condemnation, but in a call to higher values. And bravely, she addressed President Trump directly, saying, "Let me make one final plea. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the words and hand of a providential, loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in democratic Republican and independent families, some who fear for their lives, the people who pick our crops and clean our offices, who labour in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants, and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes, they are good neighbours, they are faithful members of our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, gudaras and temples. Mr. President, I ask you to have mercy on those in your communities whose children fear their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecutions in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we are all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honour the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. Very powerful words. And in subsequent interviews, the bishop has underpinned that she has no intention on calling the president out, but instead was making a plea on behalf of others too scared to speak. For many of us, her words were deeply human, offering solace to those living in fear and in holding space for the president to embrace the light of mercy, something by his rebuttal, I think we are somewhat unlikely to see. In contrast, the bishop's words serve to remind us all of the moral responsibility that comes with positions of power. To me, and to many of similar mindsets, her words were not political. They were words of someone who understands that showing mercy is not a sign of weakness, but rather one of the very greatest strength. And in contrast to the transactional, cold responses churned out by those who oppose her, Bishop Buddy's message radiated warmth and hope. I know which side of this argument I firmly plant my feet on. But there are many other examples. During his lifetime, Michael Longley was passionate, according to his children yesterday, about nature, Ireland, art, family, poetry, politics, amongst many others. And much of his poetry seeks to speak about the great injustices of life and the great injustices inflicted upon humanity, whether that be the Troubles, wars, conflict, or, as we heard last week in the readings from the Reverend Chris, the Holocaust. And a week ago, we marked our traditional Holocaust memorial service. And another example of someone who provided light in very dark journeys was the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer was a German theologian and pastor who stood against the rise of the Nazi regime in the 1930s and 1940s. And while many in the church remained silent or even supported Hitler, this pastor vehemently opposed him, speaking out against the persecution and the moral corruption of the church under the influence of the Nazi Party. He became part of what is known as the Confessing Church, a movement that resisted Nazi ideology and played a role in the efforts to undermine the work and the rule of Hitler. When others were too afraid to act, he carried the light and truth of moral courage. He could have stayed safe. He had opportunities to remain in America and avoid danger, but he chose to return to Germany in the midst of the war, knowing that his calling was to stand with those suffering under oppression. Eventually, he was arrested for his involvement in the resistance efforts and was executed in a concentration camp just weeks before the end of the Second World War. His life was a testimony to carrying light in very dark times. He wrote about costly grace, the idea that faith requires action, not just words. He famously has said that silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. His story challenges us today. How do we bring light when injustice seems overwhelming? How do we speak truth when it's costly? Bonhoeffer reminds us that even when the darkness is great, light can and must shine through with acts of courage, truth, and love. And whilst we all can't be large-scale heroes, not superheroes, we wear no capes, we acknowledge that small, medium, and large acts of sharing all kinds of light has the power to transform not only individuals, but small communities and wider communities. What does this mean for us today in All Souls Church? How do we carry light in the shadows of our world? I think you will agree that we have always tried to stand as a beacon for those left marginalised and vulnerable. We have defended and continue to defend the lives of refugees, LGBTQ people, and those who are oppressed. But this Candlemas Sunday reminds us that our work must always be rooted in love. Light is not a weapon, it is a gift. It reveals truth and should offer warmth and hope. The beauty of light is that it will continue to grow. A single candle can ignite hundreds of others without being diminished. When we act with kindness, mercy, or courage, we multiply light in the world. In the Bible, we are reminded Jesus says that you are the light of the world. Not just some of us, all of us. And that light will shine in different ways, through advocacy, through compassion, forgiveness, and quiet acts of kindness. Whatever form it takes, it is a reflection of the divine light that dwells within all of us. And as we leave this sacred space, I invite you to reflect on the light that you carry. Perhaps it is light that comforts a friend in grief, or a light that speaks truth in the face of injustice. Whatever it is, remember, it is needed. The world's shadow cannot withstand the light we bring when we act with love. We began with a Michael Longley poem about striking a match in the shadows. Now we end with the words, as a gentle reminder that our calling is to stand with arms wide open, ready to embrace the world with light and love. And Michael says, give my love to, anybody. It might as well be St. Valentine's Day. If you care to look, I am standing with my arms stretched wide open. May we all go forth with our arms wide open, radiant smiles and light in our hearts, ready to illuminate the shadows and bring warmth to our world. Amen.